future is, but it'll never be our past. You can distance in your world, you'll never ever change the past.
Hey everybody, welcome back to GVN Live. It's been a long 2 weeks. I am your host, Fight Club Hubs, and with me is Mark B, the Gamer Keith, and welcome back, Emily! Hey, so, what have you been up to? We haven't seen you in about 4 or so weeks. Pretty much all of November. I did too. Well, I got both, but I play Moon. Wait, what? I didn't do anything wrong. Hold on a second. I have no idea what the hell's going on there.
Oh, good job.
I didn't break anything.
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
Okay, they can hear you now. What?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what the hell went. I don't know what happened.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, they can hear you now. I can see the bar moving.
I know. I'm trying to. I got logged out of Twitch.
You got logged out of Twitch?
I got logged out of Twitch.
How'd that happen?
I don't know. I went to respond in the chat, and it was like,
Yeah, he can hear you.
"You're not signed in." Okay, everyone can hear me now. Okay, I'm gonna totally repeat everything I just said. I've been working a lot, pretty much. Northeast Championships, NEC 17, happening in less than 2 weeks, December 16th to 18th. So, as you guys know, I do work for Biggie Gaming. So that has been taking up a lot of my time. So it's crunch time. FYI, pre-registration ends next Friday, December 9th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have also been playing Pokemon Moon. As I mentioned before, Sun sucks, Moon is the best. As I also said, the game is kind of different from the other Pokemon Gen games, so I'm really not sure exactly how I feel about it yet. But I am going to play it all the way to the very end. I've also been playing a lot of classic games recently, fighting games, and I've been kind of taking a kind of nostalgic route. Chips Challenge, looking into getting Elf Bowling, trying to find old computer game entertainment packs that I used to play when I was a kid, pulling out Math Munchers weird games, looking on Steam for old games that were on floppy disks that I used to play that are now on Steam. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing. Work, and when I'm free, games. Although I did go to Long Island this last weekend, and I drank a lot, and I danced, and I had a good time. So for once in my busy schedule, I actually had a good time, and I worked. I mean, I didn't work. Oh my God, see, this is my life. People ask me how I was doing, and I'm like, I work. But
Like you have
yeah.
Stockholm syndrome. Jesus Christ.
I can't handle not working. It's definitely a problem. I was in Long Island, and I was getting messages, and I was responding, and my boyfriend's like, why? We're away. Stop working. And I'm like, okay. So I like threw my phone in my car and I didn't touch it for a while and it was painful. But
Withdrawal.
it was withdrawal. But you know what? I kept taking shots and then that helped. with
That
the
eased
withdrawal.
the pain.
It did. It eased the pain. But other than that, most of the time I've been working and playing games in my free time to kind of like unwind from all the work stress. So that's what I've been up to. Unfortunately, this is my last show of the year. Apparently, there's only one. Apparently, there's only one more show in December, and unfortunately then, but fortunately for me, I'm gonna be at WWE Raw Live. So,
And she didn't even invite any of us. Can you believe this?
Ain't unfortunate for me. I don't give a fuck about no fucking Raw. Fuck that.
You'd rather go to SmackDown.
Fair enough.
I'd rather go take a nap. That's what I'd rather fucking do.
And yet you still watch it week in and week out. Don't lie.
No, I read the recaps. That's it. That's all I do
but you
anymore.
care enough to read the recaps.
Exactly.
Oh,
Something good
snap.
might happen.
Honestly, Nick.
Something good happens
I'm
every
not
week. It's Kevin Owens.
Honestly, Nick, I'm not super crazy about Raw right now. I won't lie.
She's waiting for Finn Balor. She's waiting for Finn Balor to come back.
I think SmackDown is more entertaining right now. Although, yeah, if Finn Balor does come back during the episode that I'm there, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Woo! He's back. No, I don't really think about wrestlers like that. But
Yeah, okay.
shut up.
I
But
think we separate you two.
But honestly, right? We're all waiting for Finn. I wish Finn Balor would come back. Enough is enough. Too many people are injured. And like, what's going on with Emelina? Like, where the hell is she? Like, now she's not like Emma Heel anymore. Now she's Emelina.
Don't even start with that. I mean, they took away They took away Eva Marie, for crying out loud, and that's the best thing that's happened so far.
I kind of have this weird feeling that like when Eva Marie comes back, she's gonna like have this new gimmick, and she's gonna actually be like interesting, and that they're gonna make Emelina take on Eva Marie's role. It's just a bad feeling I have, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to think about it.
Anyway,
Anyway, yeah, moving on. So let's go to the rest of the GVN panel.
Video
Let's go to Gamer Keith. What have you been up to? What have you been playing, bro?
Too much goddamn work is what I've been up to.
it's like me.
Well, I work in retail, so pretty much is that we're entering the heavy season, if you will. So I honestly I've not been really playing any games lately. It's kind of sad, really. The game that I've been just playing on and off was Titanfall, and then I picked up No Man's Sky yet again because they had that huge update, but we'll talk more about that later on in the show. But really, just, god damn it, retail just sucks, and you just really don't have any time to play any of these games. Like, if anything, I want to get Skyrim. I definitely want to get the new Pokemon, and then I have Last Guardian, which comes out December 13th, I think it is. So lots of stuff that's really on the horizon, I should say.
Just to spite you, Last Guardian's going to get delayed to next month.
If they did, I'd just be like, screw it. I've waited this long at this juncture. What am I going to do? Absolutely nothing. I'm going to buy the damn game. They already have me hook and sinker. So just, again, work. And I wish that I could have a little bit more time to do more gaming, definitely. But, yeah.
All right, so that brings us to the last man standing. Mark, how you been? What you been playing?
Tired and nothing.
Yeah, that's because you're doing a whole lot of moving around, right? Get ready to get into the new apartment.
Yeah, it's just been a lot of packing, a lot of cleaning up. I still have class work I have to do. I still have work I have to do. A friend of mine brought over Gears of War 4 and played that on the Xbox One for a couple of hours while I was doing other stuff. That is the most gaming that I have really been exposed to outside of bits and pieces of Final Fantasy XIV since the last podcast. I just have not had time or inclination to do much of anything, really.
Yeah,
I feel you, Mark.
Yeah, so everybody here has been working their butt off, and you managed to somehow find time to be a part of my podcast. I'm actually very grateful to that.
Absolutely. This is I look forward to this every single Monday, or every other Monday, I should say. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I know you're lying, but I appreciate it.
I'm not lying. Screw you now, Hubs.
Well,
Anyway, so moving on to finish the first segment, let's do Emily's FGC Corner. All right, Emily, what do you got for us today in the FGC Corner?
All right. So, first things first, and as Nick has said in the comments about Marvel vs. Capcom 4, that will be a topic, but I am going to save the best for last. So, I'm going to start off with Capcom Cup is this weekend, and instead of being a one-day event, it's actually going to be a two-day event at PlayStation Experience, starting on Saturday, with the finals being on Sunday, as usual. There have been some people dropping out of Capcom Cup. I don't know all of them. I just read about one player earlier, but apparently there was like 4. That could be wrong. I need to confirm the numbers, but I do find it interesting on why you would wait until the week of Capcom Cup to drop out when you've been spending the whole entire year competing to make it into one of these spots. I'm not sure exactly how Capcom is going to handle that situation, but I think it would be only fair if a player was going to drop out and not attend, that you bring the next player up point-wise who's there to even it out. That's my opinion on that, but I will be watching Capcom Cup this weekend. Also, NEC, so Northeast Championship 17, that is in less than 2 weeks, December 16th to 18th, in a 54,000 square feet convention center floor at the Valley Forge Casino Resort. We will be announcing a ton more in the next 2 weeks, so please stay tuned for all of that. It's going to be a really good time. It is going to be the largest FGC tournament we've ever run, and we still have a lot of tricks still up our sleeves, so pay attention to our social media websites for all of that. And now, the one topic I know that Nick has been waiting forever for, Marvel vs. Capcom 4. So, a lot of people were skeptical on whether or not the game was ever going to be developed, or, when. Mostly just because of when Disney took over the rights and then Capcom's license ran out. They did not re-sign. In fact, they removed every single Marvel vs. Capcom game off of PlayStation. They took it out of all the game stores, and that was it. If you had it, that's great. If you don't have it, oh well, you're not going to get the game again. Then something interesting happened. Disney decided that they weren't going to make Disney Infinity more. Disney Infinity was done. There were no more video games. And they were just going to license out Marvel all their characters.
Well,
Marvel, everything.
That's what you get for joining the party late. That's being dominated by Skylanders and Amiibos. And now you got Lego Dimensions involved, but carry on.
I was about to say.
So, when that happened, Marvel vs. Capcom 4 talk reemerged. Because, if they're licensing off the characters, then hopefully Capcom can be able to get the license for the characters to make the game. And there's been some great people in the Marvel community, Persia being one of them, that really is working hard to keep that scene alive. So it kind of just kept getting hyped up more. Then a strange thing happened. So a couple weeks ago, we saw a teaser trailer for what we believed was Akuma coming to Street Fighter V to be playable at Capcom Cup. However, in an interview recently, just in the last 2 weeks, Ono said, "Who said Akuma was going to be in Street Fighter V?" We didn't say that. Sparking more speculation that it was actually going to be Marvel vs. Capcom 4 that was going to be playable at Capcom Experience, and that was going to be confirmed. Which leads into this past weekend, when a whole bunch of flyers, per se, could be a teaser photo, could not, nobody really knows who made it, that said 4, there were like 3 or 4 of them, with Capcom's, all the different copyright stuff at the bottom, going around. Then it was confirmed today on Polygon, claiming that there is going to be a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 that will be playable at PlayStation Experience and Capcom Cup this weekend. So where does that leave us now? That leaves us where it is not actually officially confirmed, quote unquote, by Capcom themselves, but it is looking incredibly good for the Marvel vs. Capcom community right now, and it's looking very likely. There were a bunch of rumors going around in the last couple months as well, that testing was going to begin soon. I do find it more likely that it is going to be a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 game. So the question now is, if there is going to be officially a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 game, which has me and a lot of people very excited, what do you guys want out of the game? What characters? Do you think we're going to see Disney characters at all in the game? Or do you think it's going to be strictly Marvel characters vs. Capcom characters? What do you think they can do to hype up the game more? And this is for all you Twitch viewers right now, especially Nick, although I'm pretty sure you already answered some of my questions. What character do you hope to see in the game?
I got a question. Technically,
Okay.
Marvel is the one publishing the Star Wars comics now. Could that be a loophole to get Star Wars characters into the Marvel vs. Capcom 4 game?
I was thinking the same thing.
Well, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is, yes, it's possible. I think that it's very possible, because Capcom has to negotiate with Disney to get these licenses for these characters. And Disney might say, well, I want, at least one Disney character like Mickey Mouse, and I want at least one Star Wars character, and this for the DLC. And they might have to negotiate something like that, honestly, in order to get the game made. But I feel like it would be something, like Pac-Man randomly being in a game. Like, I feel like it wouldn't be like any different than that. We'd have like a couple crazy characters, and those would be like the Disney characters. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. But they could surprise me.
Please let it be Boba Fett. Please let it be Boba Fett.
No, we'll
Please,
probably end
all
up getting
I
Kylo
want.
Ren.
Honestly, Nick, that is a concern that a couple people have brought up. The fact that if it really is slated to come out in 2017, that's next year. That means either they've been working on this for years and just didn't say anything, and it's been Capcom's best kept secret, or they whipped it up fast. And the problem with that is when they whipped up Street Fighter V fast, we all see where some of those issues are. So that's something we're going to have to wait and, kind of find out what's going on. I hope, if there is going to definitely be a game, I do hope that Capcom, took a long time, and it's, my earlier theory that they've just been working on it for several years and it's their best kept secret. But that's definitely something that we're going to have to wait and find out and see what happens. Hopefully there are no problems, because I think it's definitely going to upset a lot of people if they rush through the game and there's all these mistakes after people have been waiting for a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 game for years now. So
I bet you they're going to throw us for a loop, and it's going to end up being Street Fighter Alpha 4.
you know what though? I can't see. Here's the problem. I cannot see them coming out with another Street Fighter game right now. I can't even, honestly, as much as I would love a new, more modern Darkstalkers, I can't even see them doing that, because the reality is most of the community right now wants Marvel vs. Capcom 4, and there's going to be a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't still get the games. I would, but I do think there's going to be a lot of hate towards Capcom if it turns out it's not Marvel vs. Capcom 4. A lot of disappointed people.
They ended up having to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for over 10 years. I think they can stomach to wait a little bit longer for Marvel Capcom 4.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because that was brought up to me earlier. Somebody said to me, well, look at how long the gap was between Marvel 2 and Marvel 3. It's not even close to that period of time. And my response is this. We're in a different time period than we were then.
Oh, there was also that video game crash that happened, too.
There was also competitive gaming is not what it is now today.
No, definitely not.
And I think that factors into it a little bit. Actually, I think that factors into it a lot. Why do you think Street Fighter V was rushed so quickly? Because of Capcom Cup. It wasn't, because necessarily they wanted to. I think, games are being rushed because of this.
Crystal has a good point on that.
Well, yeah, that's exactly, Crystal. And that's the one problem that I hope we don't see with Marvel vs. Capcom 4. I hope we don't see an issue with, oh, we rushed this because we know you guys really want it, and see the same situation that happened with Street Fighter V with losing a whole bunch of money because of so many people being disappointed with the launch.
No, if I may.
It's also very possible that they're just repurposing the Street Fighter V engine in order to be able to do Marvel vs. Capcom 4.
That is possible. Didn't they repurpose the Street Fighter 4 engine for Marvel 3?
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look into that. I mean, it's possible that, Ono is trolling us and it's going to be something completely different than everything we're thinking. But I do find it interesting that he kind of let it go for a while. It's like, oh, we didn't say Akuma was in it. We didn't confirm that. So there's been, that I think right there is sparking people. But he also said in the interview another interesting thing. He's not allowed to give hints. So apparently he was told that he couldn't give hints about what was going to be playable because he was told not to, because when they gave hints before Street Fighter wise, people were cracking the codes, cracking who the characters was, figuring out and spoiling stuff. So the fact that they're keeping it so tight-lipped does also make me wonder if, now, for all we know, it could be Tekken Cross Street Fighter 2. I mean, what's going on with that game?
No.
Nobody knows. For all we know, there could be like
development forever.
No.
Right. So for all we know, the joke could be on all of us, and it's Tekken Cross Street Fighter, which they have been working on for a very long time. But I honestly don't think it will be, just for the sake of the fact that Capcom isn't developing that game. Namco is, to my recollection. Considering that Street Fighter Cross Tekken was Capcom, and now Tekken Cross Street Fighter is... That's just Tekken 7 now. Yeah, I mean, he's got a point. I mean, I think I read somewhere where it's debatable now whether or not Tekken Cross Street Fighter is even going to come out. So...
Yep. And with the rumor that they're still probably going to reveal a Soul Calibur 6 at some point at the beginning of next year, there's all kinds of craziness that's going on right now. Now we got a Marvel 4 rumor that's burning bright right now.
It's burning very bright, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this weekend at PlayStation Experience. I mean, the reality is there's going to be rumors, there's going to be all this stuff going on and all the talk going on for the next week, but we will not officially know until Capcom says it themselves.
Okay. So, thank you so much for all of that, Emily, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens at Capcom Cup. I'm sure we're going to get flooded with lots more hints as we get closer. So, moving on, and I'd like to hand this one over to Mark because it was his idea, and we all agreed that it was a good one. So, Mark, please.
Which one are we going with first?
RPGs.
Okay. So, an idea I've kind of been sitting on for a while, maybe, as a podcast discussion, whether it be here or somewhere else, is, and this is especially timely given the circumstances, I kind of want to talk about the idea of how popularity of RPGs evolved in the Western market. And I feel like this is especially timely because we're getting the launch, finally, of a game that has been, a decade in the making almost at this point now. In Final Fantasy 15, originally touted as Final Fantasy Versus 13 before becoming its own completely different entity altogether, that is going to be launching tomorrow, pretty much, and the hype is real. Conan O'Brien played it and crapped all over it. Reviews have been going up left, right, and center.
It's Conan O'Brien, so.
I mean, he kind of thought Overwatch was okay. I'm just saying, but it's the hype is real, and let us also not forget there was a huge 2.5 hour long live stream hyping Persona 5 less than 2 weeks ago, which in Japan has been a huge seller and is poised to be a huge seller in America. But JRPGs exploded, I want to say 1997 with the release of Final Fantasy VII after years in relative obscurity in the Western market. Final Fantasy VII brought them to the forefront, brought them to the mainstream. They were huge. And for years, especially from the console front, we had JRPGs everywhere. People playing Final Fantasies and Legend of Dragoons and I don't know, that one where the fucking martial artists people punched one another, and Shadow Hearts and whatever the shit.
Kingdom Hearts also.
Well, that's more of an action RPG, which is kind of a separate thing. So
honestly, when I think of RPG, I think of games like Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem.
Yeah, even strategy RPGs, I think would probably fit into that.
Even Project X. I think Project X is considered an RPG, isn't it?
Project X Zone is a strategy RPG with some action elements, so it's mostly a strategy RPG.
Yeah, like a combo system.
It's just a different type of RPG, yeah.
Pretty much. But what's interesting is, in the past, I don't know, 5-10 years maybe, it has decidedly come about that Western RPGs have become a much bigger thing in the marketplace. And you don't need me to tell you that. Just look at any marketing reports over the time periods. While Final Fantasy as a franchise is still generally quite popular, all in all, you are not going to see a property that is not Final Fantasy doing the kind of numbers that games like Fallout 3 and 4 or Morrowind or Oblivion or Skyrim are doing. Fable less so. I kind of feel like Fable's time is unfortunately done at this point.
Yeah, but at the time,
even then, I don't feel like sales-wise Fable was ever anything.
Oh no, I could disagree with you a little bit.
I think Fable 2 was probably the peak of the franchise, but I definitely think that is what helped usher in the wave of Western RPGs suddenly taking over.
Well, you know what? You can bring that up once we actually get to the discussion topic, Mr. Impatient Pants.
Sorry.
Dick. But in any case,
God.
All of a sudden, Western RPGs are the new hotness. And let us be clear, we are on the precipice of the launch of another really big Western RPG, Mass Effect Andromeda, which should be coming out shortly, pretty much, at this point. And I kind of like both to varying degrees and for various different reasons. So I thought it would be interesting to, yes, oh my God, Golden Sun, yes. I thought it would be interesting to discuss from our own perspectives as people who've had various experiences with Eastern and Western RPGs. Why do we think that Eastern and Western RPGs switched places? Like, why did Western RPGs suddenly become the default biggest sellers in the West? And what do we think could be done, if anything, to see JRPGs rise back to prominence again? So, starting from the first question, which is why they switched places, Robert.
I think one of the major reasons why they switched places was pretty much, I guess, in terms of storytelling. In Western RPGs, I think more people are connecting with the main character because they kind of embody the main character, or they, like in the Elder Scrolls franchise, you play a shell character where you can embed yourself into that role, or you play a game like Fable or Summoner, or some of these other Western RPGs when they first start out that actually had some engrossing roles, characters that you can care for and stuff like that. Whereas JRPGs, pretty much they have a set story with pretty much just a linear path in terms of how they go about reaching the goal, and and they pretty much just fill the gap in with so many cliches that you literally have seen like redone throughout the years that people just really just became numb to it. What I think that's one of the main reasons. On top of that, it's just like you can also only innovate like the let's say like a combat system, or like the way you interact with NPCs in a JRPG so much to the point where it's just like the same thing over and over again. So I mean that's kind of what I think. I mean I think people pretty much just got bored of just seeing the same crap over and over again, just with a different coat of paint.
Okay, fair points. Emily.
So, to go off what Rob said, I think some of it really has to do not necessarily just with storylines, but graphics. Graphics and how he mentioned the combat system as well. So I'm going to start with graphics. So, as I believe I've mentioned before on other shows, our video game graphics have changed drastically to what they once were. You look at Western RPGs like Fallout, Dark Souls. They're those games like that. They're so visually appealing, and they're adding so many other elements combat-wise to the game. Shooting games have become a very popular genre. So I feel like in like R-rated games, like violence, and I don't mean like violence in a bad way, like these games are gonna make people violent. I just mean they've just become very popular, and I kind of think that has some type of a effect on it. You look at games that come out of Japan, they're a lot different. I mean, I don't want to necessarily say they're not as popular, because obviously some of them really are. But I do think that what he said about storylines and the changing in the combat systems, also having more to do. It's not like one set thing. There's so much you can do that you can just keep playing after you beat the game. You have all these different choices. You can keep going. Like Dark Souls is like the game that never ends. Like you could keep playing it and playing it and playing it and play it forever. And there's so much to do that you just get entertained the whole time. But I would have to say that graphics as well. People want to see like visually stunning graphics when they play, almost realistic graphics. They want to feel like they're a part of a game. Not everybody. You do have some people that don't want that experience, but it kind of segues into the whole virtual reality thing. The better the graphics, the more we feel like we're inside the game, the more exciting it is to play the game and be a part of it, if that makes sense. And I think that that's one thing that Western RPGs kind of hold over JRPGs, and it's being able to use the storylines along with the graphics and the music to really pull the player in. So,
okay, Keith.
Well, I think it really boils down to the immersion, if you ask me. So pretty much everybody kind of pointed onto all of that. And really, with the immersion, and what I'm talking about is that I grew up with the traditional JRPGs. So you're talking your Final Fantasies, you're talking Shin Megami Tensei, you're talking a lot of... is it Dragon Warrior? Or
Dragon Quest? Well, Dragon Warrior when it first came out.
Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior. I grew up with those games, so those have a very big part in my heart for that one. But the thing is with JRPGs is that they had the stories. You actually felt a lot more connection to these characters. You felt you had a party, is what you really had, and then you went into this whole story. Like you said, it's very, very linear, and that's how you got to the end goal. And there wasn't really too much deviation beyond those parts for it. Now, with Western RPGs is that you really get a little bit more of immersion, is that you can actually do a lot of more different things inside of
Right.
them. So you have your different side quests, like Emily said, in Dark Souls, it's a game that never ends. In Elder Scrolls 4, I was just floored, just like the amount of stuff that's literally going on inside of it. And then you really don't have
You're
too much
saying
of
it a lot better than I was. I kept like stumbling over I could not get my thoughts like together, but that's pretty much what I was saying, yeah.
And is that you really don't have a connection in the Western RPGs as more as that you're kind of just guiding along more so on that one. And also it's an open world in Western RPGs. So with those open world environments, that's what a lot of people, especially in the United States especially, is that they like this open world feel that they're able to go around, they're able to do whatever it is that they want, while as more of the traditional JRPGs is again a very set path for that. So I think that really boils down to, and also again what Emily said is that a lot of the genres such as first person shooters are very big. So Western RPGs are like, how can we appeal to this market? And there you go. So I think that's really what it boils down to, is the immersion, and pretty much is that it was something different is really what it was. And most of the gamers from that grew up like me with these traditional JRPGs, or like even what Mark said, like Final Fantasy VII was the groundbreaking point of like JRPGs in the United States. So pretty much is that since people were attuned to this, they were like, now we're done with this crap. We got to move on to the next thing. So I think that's what it really, in my opinion, what it boiled down to on that.
So I feel like we all universally pretty much agree that it's a combination of the graphics and the combat systems, the storylines, and everything just kind of, it's almost like Western RPGs took what JRPGs had and just added some extra elements on to make it more enticing in a sense.
And it's interesting because I kind of agree and I kind of don't to a certain extent. Like, I don't necessarily feel that it's exclusively the combat system so much as it is that Western RPG developers took gameplay mechanics that Western gamers already clearly loved and attached them to their own concepts and their own storylines. Like, JRPGs generally work in a specific way. You can have turn-based or real-time battles, but it's, a random battle-based system. You slap something in and you go. Whereas in Western RPGs, we'll notice the two big companies that are out there, which are BioWare and Bethesda, they take genres that Western gamers already loved the crap out of in first-person shooters and third-person shooters and attach their games to them. Now, Dragon Age is a bit of an outlier in that regard, but it's still a very action-oriented, third-person, combat-based setup that kind of harkens to the idea of third-person shooters with a bit more, Dungeons and Dragons attached to it. But yeah. Mass Effect, Fallout, Skyrim, etc., all very much work off of those basic third-person shooter, first-person shooter mechanics that we've already shown we love the crap out of. So it's kind of latching your concept onto gameplay mechanics that people were already invested in at the time that they started, which, isn't the worst way of going about things if you want to make your games popular. It's catering to an obvious audience. I also kind of feel like, though, that one of the bigger problems is that from a JRPG perspective, JRPGs became fairly oversaturated with a lot of bad ideas. Yes. And I don't even want to say specifically, say, well, there were too many tropes that were being used, which is true. Let us be clear. I've seen enough Tales games to know that Tales games get pretty repetitive conceptually from one game to the next.
Yeah.
But I don't mean that specifically. I mean, we were just seeing a lot of shit nobody in their right mind was going to want to play. Like, during the PlayStation 2 era, for example, just a lot of games during the early years got shoveled out onto the console that were never going to appeal to anybody. Ephemeral Fantasia was a complete pile of shit. Thanks, Konami. Okage Shadow King was an interesting concept marred by horrible fucking execution. Just terrible fucking execution all the way around.
Don't even get me
And-
started on Enchanted Arms on the Xbox 360. That fucking pile of shit.
Yeah, and it's I don't even hate Enchanted Arms, but it was definitely not, good in the strictest sense of things. And let us note, the same people that made Demon Souls gave us that.
I mean, I think
That's
I
true.
think it's really safe to say that RPGs, at least Western RPGs, really didn't start to get very popular until PlayStation 3 came out.
Well, yeah, because there wasn't the tech processing power from the console perspective to really push them. I mean, what did we see in terms of Western RPGs until the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360? We saw Morrowind on the Xbox. That was it. Like, we had
Sudeki.
Summoner, which was not especially good in the strictest sense of things, and maybe a couple of isometric third-person action RPGs that were not necessarily that well received. I want to say, like, the PlayStation 2 had a few of those sort of isometric action RPGs. They had the
Baldur's
Baldur's
Gate Dark
Gate
Alliance.
Dark Alliance games, Fallout Brotherhood of Steel,
The
Champions of Norath, that kind of thing. And those games did okay, but they didn't capture anybody's attention. It wasn't until you had a system that could basically replicate what the PCs could do, and you could suddenly do, Morrowind or Skyrim or whatever, or Oblivion on a console, that it was like, holy shit, this is new and interesting, and we got to pay attention.
Yep. I definitely agree that the console market really ripped that one apart. Not apart, but that was their total in onto the RPG circuit was the console market. It was like, holy crap, we can actually bring this crap out now.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's worth noting that once we got to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 generation, I want to say the sixth console generation,
yeah.
we started seeing less and less JRPGs at that point. And I think that's a case of developers and publishers kind of seeing that they had oversaturated the market and pulling back a lot just as the Western RPG started to gain prominence. So it was kind of a combination of picking the worst possible time to pull back on your products, combined with somebody else stepping in and saying, yeah, we got this, it's fine, come on. And suddenly, JRPGs are mostly on the downswing. I mean, it's not like we weren't seeing some innovative JRPGs during that time period, but they just weren't making money. Look at Valkyria Chronicles, a game that anybody who's played it pretty much universally agrees is a pretty goddamn great game. And Sega had to beg us to get it to sell 1 million units. What the fuck? It was a combination, I think, of them pulling back right at the time when Western RPGs came to prominence, coupled with Western RPGs implementing very specific Western appealing mechanics that brought them to the forefront, and JRPGs just weren't really in a position to even begin to recover because they didn't even realize what they had done wrong in the first place with them.
Well, and I think that some of this goes back to video game graphics and storylines and what's demanded. I mean, there's certain style games out there right now that are heavily demanded, and there's a lot of pressure, especially right now, given how accepting video game culture is, to make a game that everybody's going to want. Otherwise, they're going to lose out money. So if Western RPGs are starting to make more money and get more popular, and the JRPGs aren't making as much money, the companies that are making JRPGs are going to start looking, okay, well, let's retreat back a little bit. Let's evaluate, okay, does anyone else hear that echo?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just me. Okay.
It went away.
Okay. So I kind of almost see it as JRPG saying, okay, we're starting to lose money. Let's retreat a little bit. Let's look, okay, what other games can we do? What do we need to do to, make more money? I mean, it comes down to money, too, at the end of the day, and popularity. If nobody likes a game and the game doesn't make any more money, they're not going to keep making that game and pushing it. Eventually, they're going to say, okay, let's try again. let's, do some research and find out what game will entice everybody. So, I mean, I kind of think that plays a little bit into it as well. The demand for, 10 years ago, there was a different demand for video games. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, it's a new demand. We have new expectations as a community for what we want in a video game. That changes. And as that changes, so do the types of games that we see coming out. So you see the JRPGs declining as you see the Western RPGs rising, because that is essentially what the gaming community wants right now. We could always see that change. What if JRPGs come out with a game and it's everything we wanted and more, and they top, what the Western RPGs are doing? That's a change. Suddenly you're going to see it shift. It's a cycle. Suddenly you're going to see Western RPGs kind of take a dive, and JRPGs take a rise. So I really think that the community and their demands kind of plays into this as well.
We want mods on our games now, on consoles.
I'm being like legit serious though. I mean,
No,
I've
I'm being
seen it
serious
change
too.
so much since I was a kid. I mean, even graphic wise. I hate bringing this up because it's not really technically an RPG, but like Pokemon.
Oh, it is an RPG.
It is a RPG. It's definitely an RPG.
Okay, I guess I just not.
It plays just by completely different rules to most JRPGs.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's technically, you know what I'm trying to say. But
it's about as much an RPG as, let's say, something like Monster Rancher.
Oh yeah, but I mean, if you go back and you look at Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, the first gen games, visually wise, storyline wise, compared to Pokemon Moon that just came out, completely different. It's still Pokemon, but I mean, it's changed drastically because of the demands of what the community wants and the rise and the ability to do more with video games. I mean, I was just using that as an example, but I mean,
So
that's true. In a way, technically, all games pretty much are. So, I mean, that's really just kind of the way I look at it. I think we're going to continue to see a change. And I think at some point, Western RPGs at some point aren't even going to be a thing. It's going to be something else, some type of game. It just depends on what the community wants at the time. And those companies are going to do whatever makes them money.
So, with that in mind, here's the second part of that question. Do you see there being a position in which JRPGs could recover, given the current marketplace, given the current situations, to come back to prominence over Western RPGs? And if so, how? And we'll start. I would say, since she's had a lot to say so far, we'll start with Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do I think JRPGs can make a comeback? Yes. I do think at some point they can make a comeback. It goes along with my whole theory of, well, with the evolution, we're going to see rise and falls of different games and styles of games, depending on what the community wants. But I do think that in order for JRPGs to make their rise again, they need to make some necessary changes they don't necessarily want to make. They need to start making games that do cater, one, to the demand of what the video game community wants. So that means they need to add elements of the Western RPGs into their own RPGs. Doesn't necessarily need to be the same, but they need to add those storyline elements in. They need to add those visuals in, which I honestly think, we're seeing some of it. If you look at Pokemon, you can beat the game, and now there's other trials and other things that you can do once you beat the game now. We saw that change starting to happen in Pokemon X and Y. The ability to beat the Elite Four, but now, afterwards, there's more stuff you can do, more battles. The storyline continues. And so I do think that they're starting to pick up on some of those traits. So I do think they're going to do that, but I think they're going to need to do more. I think they're going to need to continue to go in that route of creating games that, the community wants. And then I think they need to do more. I think they need to come up with something, some type of idea. I'm not sure what, but that factor that's going to suddenly make people say, wow, this is like the best RPG I've ever played. Did you look at this new mechanism that they have that they never had before in this game? Wow, I really want to keep doing this. And honestly, I think we might see that in virtual reality. I mean, virtual reality, it's expensive, but I really feel like the PlayStation VR, which I haven't tried yet, I do want to try it eventually. Christmas is coming up. It's on my wish list. But I really think we're going to see more and more experimentation with how video game companies can keep us going with the game and suck us in. It's the same thing you see with Destiny. People are still playing Destiny to this day, since the day they got it when it first came out. You can just keep playing these games and keep going and going and going. And while I do think that Japan is starting to experiment with that and starting to say, okay, well, if this is what they want, we're going to keep losing money if we don't do this, so let's do it. They need to take a bigger step. I don't think that they're necessarily doing it quick enough, but I do think that that's essentially what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to keep incorporating elements of the Western RPGs in that make them so popular, and then I think they need to add more onto that. They need to come up with their own thing that's going to really wow everybody, that's going to pull them away. But I do think it's possible. It's always possible for them to make a comeback.
Okay, Robert?
I think it would be really hard for Japanese RPGs to make a comeback at this point in time. I would say it's kind of going to hinge on like maybe a couple of overly hyped games to help kickstart a second emergence of JRPG love like we had in the 90s with Final Fantasy VII. But granted, at the time, Final Fantasy as a franchise was just getting more and more popular with every game that came out with it. So when 7 took hold and just, wowed everybody with what it had going on at the time, it was very easy to get people sucked into the JRPG market at that time. Whereas now, JRPGs aren't really doing enough right now to really draw people in. You got the franchises like the Shin Megami Tensei series and Persona franchise, and Final Fantasy still trying to find some way of being relevant by constantly changing and to appease markets with kind of this very futuristic tone as they try and pull away from the fantasy element of what made them a great franchise to begin with. It really, I can probably see the JRPG market maybe taking off if Final Fantasy 15 does really well critically and sales-wise, but again, it would be like a slow climb. I think they would probably be a couple years before we see anything significant in regards to like people even gearing towards. We got so many great Western RPGs out right now that just are stealing people away from even playing MMOs. You got Fallout 4, you got Andromeda coming out next year. That's going to be like, a really big game. There's still people who are still playing Dragon Age 3. So go figure. That's a freaking huge game, at least. And you got Witcher 3, which has so much content on there. You got a lot of these amazingly huge games that offer so much. And when you also look at, this is actually something I forgot to mention about when we were talking about your first question. When it comes to Western RPGs, they offer so much, and JRPGs offer so little, to be truthfully honest. So once JRPGs start incorporating things that kind of like what a Pokemon game does with post-game content and stuff like that, then maybe they will have an audience that will be drawn in more, and they can have a resurgence in JRPGs. But they have to, they have to find ways of drawing in the crowd. Dark Souls 2 the Dark Souls franchise in general has a great thing going for it. but it's more of an action RPG than it is just a JRPG, to be truthfully honest. So they just really got to find a medium, and they got to have that breakout game, is what I'm thinking.
Basically, they essentially just need to find their own oomph. Like
Niche
I was
again.
saying, they need to they need to come up with a new idea that appeases everybody.
Okay. Keith.
Okay. Well, to answer your question on this bluntly and simply, no. Just for well, is that this is
Sudden?
the way that
Just
this is the way that I look at this, and call me closed-minded, however you really want to put it. Is that when I grew up with JRPGs. I love JRPGs. I really think that they need to get back to more of the basics for their JRPGs, and they're moving forward to try to appease this giant audience of the Western RPG market, which I don't think they should do. I think they're going about it all wrong, if you ask me on that one, because when I play a JRPG, this is what I'm looking for. If I'm playing a Western RPG, I know this is what I'm looking for this. But honestly, I don't think that the JRPG scene was really that huge. And this is just from like the outside looking in sort of thing, is that JRPGs always had their niche market in the U.S. No matter what, it's not going to go away. It's not like going to evaporate out or anything along those lines. Kind of like the RTSs that you would see nowadays. Like RTSs, I have not seen any really besides StarCraft 2. I can't think of one RTS game that's out right now. So that's being really kind of being pushed to the back burner. Nobody's really doing that. JRPGs are always going to be here to stay because it's always got this niche market. Like Mark was bringing up earlier, is that it really got saturated quite fast. But the thing is that they did have a lot of really good nuggets of really good games that came out. It's just that really we did not see them stateside was the whole thing. So you have all these amazing games that are in Japan and they're not seeing it over here because they already know that it's night and day between the two cultures, really. If you really think about it, is that they honestly probably don't really give a crap what is going on here, as more so that they're going to sell 1 million copies guaranteed. Like Final Fantasy 15 is probably have already sold about 20 million copies throughout Japan, while here it's not even launched yet, and maybe they'll sell 1 million copies by midnight. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, so don't ever interpret these as facts whatsoever. But anyway, I don't think that it could be. It's not going to go booming, because I think that they had their boom. That was the one thing. It put it onto the map saying like, hey, these RPGs are out here and they have really great stories for it. And pretty much that was the benchmark for it. And things have expanded since then, either JRPGs and Western RPGs. I just think that Western RPGs kind of saw an opportunity on these next gen consoles and really ran with it, as far as that's concerned. But again, I really like a traditional traditional JRPG, like a Fire Emblem, like the new Fire Emblems that are coming out, or did they come out? I don't know. I feel like really like a shitty gamer right now, and a shitty Nintendo fanboy for that matter, that I can't even tell you when Fire Emblem came out. But like those were great games, and that was actually, they're changing the formula on that a little bit. That it's actually going to have 2 separate storylines. So it's like that's intriguing to me. That I think is a different way of looking at it. So I like the keep it simple, stupid sort of method, if you ask me.
Well, I mean, to go off of what you said, while I understand what you're saying, the thing I think it really comes down to at the end of the day is business and money. It costs a lot more to make video games. So in order to sell 1 million copies, they have to spend a lot more now than they used to, 10 years ago, when we were playing these JRPGs. So
not to mention they had double the staff.
And so they're going to have to, the only way for them to continue, I feel like, even where they're at now, is to try to appease all the players all over. I mean, we have a huge gaming market, way bigger than Japan's, player-wise, in the U.S., and that is continuing to rapidly grow in the last couple years. That's a lot of money that Japan could be making. So I feel like, you know, sometimes it's not all about just the video game in general. Sometimes it really is about they can't keep making these games if they don't have money. And since it's now more expensive to make video games, they need to reevaluate what they're doing if they want to keep it going.
Yeah, but it's also the way that it's marketed too is the whole
That
thing.
too.
Like Xenoblade. Xenoblade was a frigging amazing game. Amazing game. Like you can't find that game for that matter. It's so rare for that. It's because it wasn't marketed very
But
good.
see, the same thing is though, it costs money to market a game properly. It's not cheap. So
Well, sometimes it's not a matter of having the money to market the game properly. It's a matter of how smart are you about marketing it. And Nintendo has proven that they're not really good at marketing games, to be honest.
Well, I mean,
They go by word of mouth mostly.
Well, I was just going to come up with a good example. I can't tell you how many times I see commercials on Twitch ads or, you know, Hulu or anywhere else of new games coming out. And 9 times out of 10, they are not Nintendo games. And I'm on, you know, I go on my 3DS and I'm in, you know, eNintendo, and I'm looking at all the new games coming out or out. I'm like, when's that? I'm like trying to watch the trailers to get an idea of the game because I don't ever recall actually seeing a trailer for that. And I mean, if they start, you know, putting trailers up on like Hulu, for example, of some of their games coming out, they might see a surge. They might see a change. People taking more interest in those games. So, you know, I do, in a sense, agree with you that they're not the best when it comes to marketing their games. And they really only choose certain particular games when they're at E3 or having, you know, certain conventions to actually market. And it's the same ones we typically see. Mario, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox, Smash, Pokemon. Yeah. What about the other ones? The RPGs. And I will go and I will look at all the games that are online to download. And there are a ton of RPGs that are coming out, but I never hear about them until I actually go looking for them.
Well, here's another case in point, and Mark can kind of back me up on this one, but I'm not sure if it's a JRPG or not, or if you would consider a JRPG. What that's the God Eater game, Mark? I think it is.
Yes.
That series
that would be
like,
a hunting action game, sir.
Okay. So wouldn't really fall into this category.
More
I guess.
akin with
It
Monster
still
Hunter.
falls into the whole marketing issue, I guess.
Well, I was about to say is that game looks freaking amazing. Like, if anything, as just a Western RPG gamer, not necessarily being so much of that I grew up with gaming and I know, like, all the different steps that go into it, so to say. But that game looks freaking amazing, but nobody knows about it. And that's the whole thing. It really boils down to pretty much like you said, it is the money for that one. But I think that if you have a solid product that you could stand behind, that money money makes the world go round, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to, you know, be bad. I think that a lot of these games, if you actually gave it to, if it was marketed correctly, that if they were to get into the hands of gamers, that it would be awesome. But also is that you're seeing a lot more of this influx of what you would call the casual gamer. So, like, the people that play FPSs, they're not going to be intrigued whatsoever by, you know, turn-based, like, oh, I have to pick my potion. I got to pick what attack I'm going to do next. I'm not going to put any thought into it. They want everything done by a press of a button now, quick reflex for it. So, again, I don't think that it could be saved too much on this end here in the Western end. However, it's going to thrive. It's going to still live on, but it's still going to be, you know, obviously in Japan, it's going to be their main market for that. Because if we were Japanese and we were talking about the same subject, that we would be like, oh, fuck those Western RPGs. These games are fucking amazing.
But they do sell pretty well over there, the Western RPGs. Well, the high-profile ones do, at least.
I have the conch. Now let me speak.
I can't see you, so it's really hard to, you know when you want to speak.
No, I gave you I figured I would wait until you guys were done, but
yeah, I unfortunately do need to get going.
Mark
now,
has the talking stick.
No, it's completely understandable.
But he can have the talking stick all he wants, but unfortunately I do have to leave a little bit early today, so it is after 10. I apologize. But I really enjoy chatting with you guys tonight. I'm glad to be back on, and hopefully I can be on more steadily next year,
Yeah.
Hopefully.
which I can't even believe it's going to be next year already. But
Yeah. I'll definitely see you at NEC though. So.
yay! Are you guys coming to NEC?
Where and when?
NEC is at the Valley Forge Casino Resort in King of Prussia, December 16th to 18th.
I may actually still be in the process of moving, so I cannot commit to it.
I might, but the thing is that I have like mandatory days that I have to work, and since those are on the weekends, that may be one of them. But again, I'll see if I can come out. I would love to see all of you guys and just hang out. We'll like talk video games and like play some fighting games, and you'll kick my
Yeah,
ass.
I
and all
mean
of them.
it'll be well, it'll be going on all weekend. Don't worry. It's gonna be a busy weekend and a fun weekend. But all right, I will talk to you guys all later. Have a good rest of the show, and bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Emily.
Adios.
Coming.
All
Thank
right.
God she's gone. No, seriously.
That's horrible.
Somebody has to be the asshole. It can't always be you.
that
No,
is that is
seriously.
true.
Seriously, though, here's my thing. On one hand, I do agree with Keith's assessment that JRPGs probably don't need to get out of where they are at the moment. And I do agree that marketing probably is a big part of why they aren't doing better. But on the other hand, I also kind of feel like we're in this weird testing the waters position right now where you kind of have to justify spending the kind of money that's needed to get that heavy marketing going. And this is what I'm talking about. Look at the last few notable Japanese role-playing games, not necessarily JRPG specifically, but Japanese games that feature role-playing game elements that have been popular outside of the Final Fantasy franchise. All right. The Tales games generally do a consistent amount of money, but the two that I want to talk about in particular are Persona 4 and Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 did not have that kind of heavy marketing that we're talking about. It had advertising all over the place-ish, but a lot of it was also very much word of mouth. And over a period of years, we've gone from Demon Souls to Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 to Bloodborne and whatever. And those games have consistently done around 2 to 3 million copies as time has gone on, evolving from, I want to say, around 1 million for Demon Souls, which is a good evolution over time from word of mouth. Monster Hunter is another great example of word of mouth evolving and franchises building up. Persona 4 in particular also benefited a lot from that. So where we had Persona 3, which did well from a niche perspective, and Persona 4, which did quite well from a niche perspective, Persona 4 Golden was basically a system seller for the Vita and did gangbusters numbers comparatively. And Persona 5 is the highest selling Persona game of all time in Japan at this point, and is a huge fucking success and has a huge amount of hype behind it, and is almost certainly going to do 2 to 3 million copies in the US easy. But you kind of have to get to that point where it's like, can this game move 10 million copies to justify paying money for, you know, streaming advertising and things like that? Because the thing is, a lot of the places where you're advertising are going to charge a shitload of money. Like, I mean, a shitload of money. Because they know that their advertising is at a premium to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So and you have to pay X amount of money for X amount of impressions. So it's, you know, you're probably going to have to pay, you know, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, however much amount of money to get your property out there on places that have the eyes on them. You don't necessarily need to advertise it on, say, a video gaming website, because those places are going to be doing previews on your games anyway, but you want to try and advertise them in more mainstream places. How much money does it cost to advertise for television for, you know, a 30-second spot? Where do you even begin to advertise something like that? Those are questions that you have to worry about if you're going to be doing this sort of thing, and it's not like you can just ask Square Enix, because they're not going to fucking tell you. So it's you kind of have to wonder, how many more sales can I do? Do I think that God Eater could do way more sales than it did based on its current situation? Absolutely. But this is the thing to keep in mind. I wrote, an 8-page article detailing what people should know about God Eater 2 Rage Burst, and that thing became one of the highest hitting pieces I've ever written for Die Hard Game Fan. That's definitely shows that there's an interest there from people who are like, what's this God Eater thing? I've never heard of it. And
you sold me out.
It's getting it out there.
I mean, you totally sold me on that game. Like, as soon as you were talking about that, I started, like, doing my own research on it. I'm like, holy hell. Like, how was I never heard about this game.
Yeah, and it's advertising could sell these games, but I think they're going to need to get to a point where you're moving 4 or 5 million copies just off of word of mouth and the advertising that they do now before you're going to be comfortable saying, all right, let's put a TV spot out there, you know? So I think that they could potentially match up with games like Skyrim or, Mass Effect or what have you, given enough time. But I don't know if they're necessarily worried about hitting, 5 million sales or 10 million sales and then trying to push for that big, television spot or what have you. I imagine that they're probably comfortable doing 2-3 million sales in general. So, could they potentially get back to a point where they're running neck and neck with the Western RPGs? Probably, given enough time. Because I think they've adopted the core elements while still remaining true to themselves. I don't think we need another first-person fucking RPG from Square Enix or Bandai Namco or Atlas or whoever. I don't think that is a thing that we need to do, because then it's just an also-ran experience. I think you can do what you're doing differently while still being interesting.
And for the record, there's no such thing as a bad Atlas game.
I would strongly disagree. Even internally developed Atlas games, I've played Demi Kids, and that's all I'm going to say. But
never played it, so
imagine Pokemon, but not fun.
Oh God.
So it's at the end of the day, what it comes down to is I just don't think it's worth for them financially to try and make that risk only to see their games, maybe only improve 1 or 2 million and not justify it. So I feel like if they got to a point where they were getting a committed 5 million sales per game through word of mouth and whatnot, they might try it, and then we might start to see that kind of thing. But as it stands right now, I don't know that they necessarily need to, or that they even necessarily want to.
Typing away there. Whoa.
Yep. So, Western RPGs are just really good, to be truthfully honest, in my opinion. I mean, the last 10 years, they've been really great. Well, for the most part. The European ones are very hit and miss. What do you think,
But
Keith?
also, well, I mean, if anything, I do like I like a lot of the Western RPGs. Again, Skyrim, freaking amazing game. Even though in my heart of hearts, Elder Scrolls Oblivion is better, and I don't care what backlash I get for that one. But Elder Scrolls Oblivion was better game versus Skyrim, in my opinion. But this also brings on to the next. I guess I wouldn't really say topic, but I'm just gonna make a quick mention of it. Is No Man's Sky. So No Man's Sky, they came out, and again, it had that huge flop, but again, it had marketing up the yin-yang for everything for it. So it was overhyped, like you said. It was like riding that midnight hype train. And then they came out with the latest patch, which actually fixed not a whole lot of stuff, but it did a lot of good stuff on it. I really am starting to pick up it. I really love No Man's Sky again. The fact that I can build a base, the fact that I can set up a home planet, the fact that I can actually own a freighter, I can go and collect my own elements, I can send out and sell stuff. Like, I think that Western RPGs are definitely growing, and they're definitely here to stay, and I can only see them going to the left as far as that's concerned. But with the JRPGs, again, I think that they're just here to stay, and that they're just going to be at that constant pace for it, unless, like, Mark was saying, that they come out with this huge game that they were like, okay, we feel comfortable enough to invest in putting this out here because they see that the audience is there for it. And for example, like you were saying, Dark Souls 3, and then that same development studio made Bloodborne, and they went on with Sony, and everything was just peaches and cream from there. Yeah. But that's really what I think the matter for it. But again, NPS No Man's Sky, I love it.
Speaking of No Man's Sky, it is actually time for us to move on to our next topic of conversation. So, Keith.
So, pretty much, to get back to No Man's Sky again, is that recently they just came out with their huge patch, which is 1.101, I think that is what it was, or it was 1.01, and that it added a lot of new features into the game, stuff that we were not so much initially promised, but they're kind of paving the way to things that were promised in the game. So first things first, and this is when you first start up the game, is now there are 3 modes in the actual game. First one is your classic No Man's Sky, where you can just pretty much do whatever the hell you want. Go to whatever planet that you want. If you want to friggin' go mine all day, you can do that. If you want to find the center of the universe, you can do that as well. If you want to spend all this time and waste all this time trying to find Atlas stones, you can go for it. Then they added a second mode to it, which is the survival mode, which is really hard. Really hard. Like, not like Ninja Gaiden hard or anything along those lines, but they just made it a little bit more difficult where you're actually going around, you're fighting a lot more, so you have that element on there. And then they added a third option, which is the creative mode. And that was what I was talking about previously, where you can set up a home planet. You can actually start building an empire, so to say, or not an empire, that's very over exaggerated, but you can definitely build up a home base. You can have aliens come and chill at your pad. You can develop technologies here. You can start farming, and if you get lost any place, you can get instantly transmitted right to your home base. You can find different aliens to work and learn from. You can get a freighter that you can sell different items that you see into different galaxies that would be a little bit more expensive, or not expensive, but a lot more value you can get from these items that you can sell here. Lots of cool stuff. Like, this is the game that was kind of being promised to us. But really, what I would like to hear from the audience is, what is your opinion on it? Do you think that No Man's Sky can be saved? Because honestly, I loved that game before even everybody was all like pissed off at it. And again, I went into it with very realistic expectations of, okay, there's a purple dragon on this planet. Oh, there's that same dragon, but now he's green. But do you think that No Man's Sky can be saved with this huge patch? And with this also being in mind, is that in future patches, will we start seeing more of the stuff that we were promised when they were like, oh, you could actually get into fights with space pirates, or they could add a lot more stuff to it? I think that pretty much when we had, I forget which show we were doing it on, is that it would have been a really fantastic beta game. A really fantastic beta game. A pay to, like, okay, instant early access, so to say.
I guess the real main question is besides the game being saved, it's really more along the lines, does anybody really care anymore at this point? Because one of the main issues that people had with the game was just how incomplete it was when it came out. And yeah, granted, the company's been releasing fixes and patches a lot since its release, whereas I think it may be too late for this game. I mean, where a game like, let's say, Street Fighter V, as broken as it was upon release, it was still salvageable because, I mean, the main feature, core feature that they really were working towards was making it an esports game. So they had the essential versus mode and online lobby system, or online versus mode up and running, so that they can capitalize on that. Whereas the main features of No Man's Sky, which is like building bases and dogfighting in outer space, they were absent. And some of those features are still absent to this day. And that can put a taste in a person's mouth. So it makes it really hard for, I guess, for people. I mean, with the exception of like like you fell back in love with the game again because of of the major changes they've made. But it's just like, is it really enough for the majority of the people out there that stopped playing in the first place?
Well, I think that anybody that still like you said, is that you actually make a very, very good point, to which I would love to argue a lot more on it, but I'm very ill-informed on it. Would be that what's that?
I can know it.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Let me
Go for it.
ask you a question, Robert, to start off here, and I really feel like this is important for qualifying the difference between No Man's Sky and Street Fighter V. It's a very simple one. Outside of us, people who are at least tangentially interested in the fighting game community to varying degrees, who gives a fuck about Street Fighter V? Nobody. Fucking nobody.
I think a lot of people do give a crap about the game, to be truthfully honest.
No.
I mean, it didn't sell well, but there's still plenty of
How often do you
copies
see it
sold
talked
on
about-
Steam
how
and
often
on
do you see it talked
PS4.
about on social media?
What's that?
How, outside of people who are in the FGC, how often do you see it talked about on social media?
As far as
All the
gaming,
time?
I mean,
Literally, it's talked about all the time.
Yeah, but how many people that don't exist within the periphery of the FGC do you follow?
A lot.
Okay. I almost never see this game talked about unless it's by you or Emily.
yeah, I would have to agree with Mark on that one. As far as, I mean, I'm not a casual gamer. I'm just a seasoned gamer. But I don't really see too much on Street Fighter V outside of the actual fighting game community. I haven't heard too many actual, like the actual casual gamers and or the seasoned gamers like myself saying like, oh, Street Fighter V. Oh, I haven't heard really too much about it.
I mean,
even our mutual.
Sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, even our mutual friend, Relegio 13, Reggie, I haven't heard anything from Street Fighter V on that, and he friggin' loves Street Fighter, except for after 4, he hated it. But again, that was somebody that loved those game series. You never hear anything about it from him.
Yeah.
Right, and it's
If anything, I just wanted to make my point because I was trying to talk over him. I didn't mean to talk over you now. But I mean, now if you want to compare something, nobody talks about King of Fighters anymore, and that was the game that everyone says is much better than Street Fighter V. So,
sure, but this isn't the argument of, can we fix King of Fighters?
No.
There was really only the one problem we had with King of Fighters. Fighting games in general are rarely transcendent experiences, to be fair. But if you're going to have a transcendent experience, it's going to come from one of two games. A Tekken or a Street Fighter. Because those are the standard bearers for the genre. That may change someday, but real talk, if it isn't Tekken and it isn't Street Fighter, the mass market doesn't give a fuck about it. Here's the thing, though. Street Fighter V was majorly hyped as a console exclusive for PlayStation 5. It was pushed out to significant hype, and it is one of the two major standard bearers of the fighting game genre at this point. And outside of its first month and a half of launch, only the fighting game community is talking about it. It's not a game that has a persistent mental presence for those outside of the fighting game community. Another good example, Titanfall. Titanfall came out, did gangbusters numbers, and within 2 weeks, nobody was fucking talking about it on social media at all. That is a game that made its money, and then nobody gave a shit about it immediately after it launched.
Mm-hmm.
If Titanfall had launched in that kind of a condition, I would have agreed with you, and I would have said, yeah, Titanfall was fucked, or yeah, Street Fighter V is fucked, which we've kind of sort of agreed that outside of the FGC, maybe it is, because nobody's talking about your game. Nobody cares about your game. Nobody gives a fuck about your game, because if they did, it would be popping up more readily on social media outside of the occasional, updates from gaming websites like, IGN or GameSpot or Kotaku. How often do people talk about No Man's Sky on social media?
I honestly don't see that many people talking.
Literally every fucking day.
I was about to say, I see it a little bit more now, as of right now, after
after the patch.
update.
Yeah, after the patch,
Even
I've been
before
seeing
the patch, I constantly saw people talking about how broken No Man's Sky was, or how they still love No Man's Sky. Anyway, No Man's Sky is the modern equivalent of Destiny right now.
I could agree with that one. That it's definitely a Destiny kind of game. That it's
And
only
here's
going to
the
grow.
thing. Because you have that big media presence, success or failure, people are still talking about that game. People still know about that game. I saw people like just making joke tweets about like fake awards that they gave to No Man's Sky on Steam because Steam is allowing you to put in the titles for your own awards now for some reason. Surely that won't be a fucking disaster. But like, here's the thing: is No Man's Sky is still in the mouths of gamers. Whether it be people complaining that the game was broken, people talking about they loved it. A lot of game critics, and to be clear, I don't mean game reviewers. I mean independent critics, people like Hamish Black writing on games, H Bomber Guy, Dan Olson, made their own videos talking about what the experience of No Man's Sky was for them as topics they wanted to discuss. Like, they weren't being paid for it. They didn't get review copies. They just wanted to talk about that game. No Man's Sky, love it or hate it, is huge. It is a gaming experience conversationally that has transcended everything that we talk about. It is a part of some people's daily fucking interactions. And that's important because if you have a game like No Man's Sky where you can consistently push out those updates and that game is constantly in the mouth of gamers in some capacity or another, you're going to start converting those people who hate your game as more and more updates come out. Again, look at Destiny, a game that came out that a lot of people were not very happy with. Oh, I have to camp a cave for an hour shooting at stuff in order to get any kind of decent loot drops. Oh, they patched that out. Oh, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this game now? By the time The Taken King came out, we had all kind of universally agreed, yeah, Destiny's pretty good. Maybe not great, maybe not my favorite thing, but it's at least pretty good. It's at least an enjoyable experience. It took them a year to get to that point, and they still managed to do it. So long as Sony has the back of Hello Games financially, creatively, everything else, and by all indications they do, it is very likely that we will see the recovery of No Man's Sky within 6 months to a year. It will never be what it was supposed to be. It will never have the universal acclaim that it had the day before it launched, but it can definitely recover from this situation. And I mean, fuck, don't take my word for it. Look at Final Fantasy XIV, a game that launched to near universal panning, turned around and became probably the second most popular MMORPG running right now.
I was actually thinking the same thing. I was about to say, if they really did this correctly, that if they fixed all the not so much the bugs, but if they could really cash in on even a quarter, or I'll even say half the promises that they initially had, you could release that shit as the definitive edition or whatever the hell they would want to call it and release it. People would definitely buy it, or gamers would definitely pick it up, or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I was actually the Final Fantasy XIV thing actually popped into my mind at the very end of what Mark was saying, and I was just like, oh, I mean, it definitely can happen. I mean, Cyber Trails, Cryptor Tales was just mentioning that, yeah, the secondary unit, which I assume is going to be their next big update for the game within the next 6 months.
It's a Deus Ex quote. It's a Deus Ex quote.
Yeah.
I didn't play enough of the first game, so I obviously didn't get it. Don't indeed. Yeah.
I believe it's kind of. I believe it's. I don't really know what it's in reference to, but it's a quote from Deus Ex. But yeah, there's definitely room to come back from that, I think.
Okay, so definitely. Any final thoughts on the No Man's Sky, Keith?
Nope. If anything, I'm just more excited since they fixed these things because of all the. I would say that because of the outrage that they fixed a lot of these things, that I would like to see what's going to happen more, and especially since it's free downloadable content, I think that's amazing that I don't have to pay for this unless they're going to become smart, in which case, God help me for just saying that. I just gave them $1 million idea. God damn it, you better pay me. Hello, games. That as long as they keep this free content coming out, I think that they could definitely make a comeback.
All right, so with that said, I guess, why don't we, for the next 5 minutes, do what we've been doing for the last few episodes now. We will happily take questions from the audience that is watching us. I'm sure Nick's got like another 20 questions lined up, ready to be asked. Same with Crystal. So the floor is now yours, and we will answer your questions to the best of our ability. In the meantime,
Talk nerdy to me, everybody.
oh, you bad boy.
I need an adult.
One thing you hope that goes away in 2017 for gaming. Mark, we'll give that one to you. I'm sure there's something you really want to see go away.
The Walking Dead. It's not going to happen, but I would really like 2017 to be the last year that we have to deal with The Walking Dead as a fucking gaming franchise. Alternatively, Telltale in general, really, I would be fine with that too, honestly.
Really? Telltale? What?
You know what? That actually, that's an idea I had for a topic of conversation for a future show that we will save, actually.
All right.
Yeah, not just Telltale, but pretty much what Telltale has been a part of, which is the adventure gaming, or the adventure genre. So
yeah, I actually recorded a podcast with Alex about that. So you just keep coming up with all these ideas that I either want to do or have already done.
Well, I'm sure we're going to go in a completely different direction with mine. Although I will have to listen to that episode with Alex. When does it go up?
I have no idea.
Plug your shit.
Yeah, I have no idea when that episode goes up. Though we did an episode this past week with Mr. Nick Tricombe, a.k.a. It's Nick 215. I have no idea what episode I'm going to be doing for this week yet. It may be the Alex episode. If I can get a new person to do a recording this week, it's going to be that, though. So, we'll see.
All right. So, speaking of Nick, his question is: your dream PlayStation reveal. What would you want it to be, and how would you want it? How would you want to present it? We'll go with you, Keith.
I don't know. Like, if anything, like Sony just been, or the PlayStation stuff has just been out of the park lately. So like they can't really. I don't know. That's a really good question, but I'm gonna pass it off to somebody else on that one.
All right. So you know what? Dream PlayStation reveal. You know what? That's a good one. I would say I would love to see the new Crash Bandicoot revealed in like kind of a goofy way, like something like totally off the wall. Like, remember when Nokia debuted at E3 and they were showing off the N-Gage and it had nothing to do with the N-Gage whatsoever, just a bunch of random street dancers doing all kinds of wackadoo stuff, and all of a sudden somebody takes off a shirt and they just reveal a price on spray painted on their shirt. I'd probably do something stupid like that just to confuse people. Nick says he would love to see Mega Man Legends 3. How about you, Mark?
PSN version of Snatcher.
A re-release, remaster, or a remake?
I don't really need them touching it at this point. Just do a re-release of... You can do a re-release of the Sega CD version, but I would probably be perfectly fine if they took the PSN version and put all of the dialogue from the Sega CD version into that. I just subtitle it and leave the Japanese audio in. I don't even give a shit at this point. Just release Snatcher on fucking PSN.
Even though the PlayStation version was very was censored quite a bit.
I don't even really care, to be honest. I just want a version of it
Snatchers
available at this point. Yes, I just want a version of it available at this point.
Okay, so Cryptor Tales asks, what game will spawn the most waifus in 2017, and why? No, you don't want to answer that one.
No. Husbandos/waifus.
I didn't.
How have you played video games all these time and you don't know how to pronounce Japanese, sir?
Because I don't play Japanese. I don't read Japanese, speak Japanese. I don't care.
A Telltale edition.
That's
of
racist.
Story.
Racist. Okay, sure.
Anyway, what game will spawn the most husbandos/waifus in 2017, and why will it be the Telltale edition of Yoshi's Story? Which is really interesting because I didn't even know that Telltale had announced a version of Yoshi's Story, but I'm going to assume that he's on the level on that one. However, I'm gonna make the assumption that that's not going to spawn the most husbandos/waifus, and I am instead going to make the argument that it's going to be Persona 5. Fuck you! Don't even care. Come at me, bro.
2017. I have to actually take a look at the release list. I mean, the only game I know of, Persona 5.
Well, I have mine.
The re-release, the PlayStation 4 release of Danganronpa 1 and 2. But then again,
I also feel like Mass Effect 3 Andromeda would probably be an acceptable answer, just because that Commando Asari, she can get it. She can get it.
Yep. All right. Let's see here. Any more questions? You
didn't even let Keith try to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keith. He didn't seem like.
What game do you think is going to spawn the most characters people want to fuck?
Very good question.
I'm not even drunk, I swear.
Damn. Do you know what? Screw it. I'll just say it. I'll say Legend of Zelda. Like, maybe they'll have something out of nowhere. Like, if anything, maybe somebody will just find Link very attractive and want to fuck him. And or the new Zelda is going to be, like, bodacious. That's the only thing I can think of in 2017 as far as that's concerned. Or, like you said, Mass Effect, definitely. That would have the most characters that you would want to fuck, especially the aliens. So it'd be like, yep. Look at him.
Okay,
oh, boy, fuck Martian once.
I want to fuck that Volus so fucking hard. Jesus Christ.
All right, we're gonna end it with
fucking rebreather. I don't even care.
All right, we're gonna end it with this last question of the night. Who's a character whose existence you absolutely despised in a game? We're gonna start with you, Keith.
Andrew Ryan from BioShock.
Mark.
What?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. I thought Andrew Ryan was just a good enough answer. You didn't need to explain.
Okay, then never mind.
Well, no, go ahead.
Go ahead. You can explain away, sir.
No, it's because, like, after playing that game, like, I felt really fucking betrayed by this motherfucker. Like, fuck him. Like, freaking making me go down to this freaking, like, city in the ocean, like, all these fucking bullshit.
You're thinking of Atlas, not Andrew Ryan. Andrew Ryan was the guy that fucking gave you the golf club to beat him to death with.
Yeah, well, he still created that city, goddamn him. Fuck him.
Okay.
And how about you, Mark?
Galleon. I generally tend to like my villains with the side of, empathy. And while Kefka is definitely number 2 on my list of best villains from any game, and certainly my number 2 from best villains in JRPGs, I couldn't really empathize with his plans, because his plans were, I'm a crazy person who wants to kill everything, and while that's fucked, like, I don't feel anything for that. It's just, oh, you're a crazy person who wants to end everything. Galleon is kind of a crazy person who definitely has a fucked up plan, but you could understand why he has the plan that he has. And for me, that's compelling in a way where, specific directed evil doesn't always suffice. Plus, he constantly got in your way and constantly ruined everything that you were trying to do without necessarily making it feel cheap and shitty, like you wanted to turn the game off because fuck this guy, because you knew eventually he was going to get his. So I still feel like even, a decade or so later, Galleon is the RPG villain for me.
For me, that's really hard because I can't really think of a character I've despised that much. I would probably say it was, I guess, Slippy Toad, because his voice was so goddamn obnoxious in Star Fox 64. Literally, it was the most annoying thing ever. Help me! I mean, oh, shut up! I want to shoot you down myself.
You despise him that much? You despise Slippy Toad?
Who doesn't despise a fucking toad?
People hate the Duck Hunt dog.
Yeah, him too.
Well, if anything, I was going to say, I would agree with Falco mostly because he's just a dick, but Slippy, really?
Well, he's the tough guy of the group. He has to be the dick. He's got to keep you on your toes.
I got it. Fair enough.
So, anyway, I guess that wraps up our questionnaire section of the show. Thank everybody for tuning in to watch us. We had a all-time high. First time we've hit 10 viewers in probably, a month? Which is good. We love interacting with you guys. It's great to see some of our regulars out here talking with us again and interacting with us. Again, we love to interact with our fans, so thank you so much for joining us. Upcoming is my next game jam, which is this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Game and guest to be determined because Nick, unfortunately, had to... I don't mean to call you out like this, bro, but he was going to be my guest and we were going to play Lego Star Wars, but that's going to have to be pushed back because, work sucks. So that's life, unfortunately. So anyway, Mark, why don't you plug your shit?
Well, you can follow my writing over at diehardgamefan.com, and you can follow the podcast, Neo Kobe Pizza, either over at SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/MarkBWriting, or on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Music, and basically anywhere podcasts are hosted.
And how about you, Keith?
Pretty much. I'm just gonna say that 2017 is going to be a nice little relaunch of everything. At the second, I really have no other endeavors at the second, other than I will be on every single podcast that we have at this moment, which is one more for this year, and I will also be on Game Jam with Hubs at some point in December. I think it was December 14th, so that's when you can
the
check
last
out
Game Jam of the year too.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, yes. So anyway, for our next GVN live show, it will be the last one of the year, so we are going to do some year-end festivities in terms of, well, we're going to be planning this and talking about this a lot leading up to the show, so we might do like a makeshift BS, like an end-of-year award show or something like that. Who knows? It's going to be random, it's going to be fun, it's going to be awesome. So, and it's our last show of the year. It will be on December 12th. It will, again, go live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Mark. I want to thank Keith for joining me tonight. We want to thank Emily for coming back. And she has a lot of stuff on her plate right now. So you got to excuse her. She will not be in the next episode. Thank you all, and have yourself a wonderful night.
Yes, I want to wear a tuxedo. Have a good night, everybody.